You guys have been asking me to cover the newest Bluey infection AU created by IceStarUnknown called the Hope Universe, and it seems to focus more on Rusty's family and the adults in general, but just be aware that it's still a sad AU just like the other ones, so prepare for that. Now this story starts off the same as the other versions, with Rusty playing baseball by himself when the ball actually gets hit into this pool of still water. And it seems like this pool was full of all type of gunk and bacteria, and we can kind of see this here when we see the ball is covered with this white mold. Now this wouldn't have been a big deal if Rusty and his family didn't knock the ball through the window and then send the ball right into the family's dinner. But not wanting to waste food, the mom says it'll probably be okay and a little dirt never hurt nobody. And since Rusty felt guilty, he volunteered to eat the portion of the food that was touched by the dirty ball. And this will prove to be a terrible choice. And we see that later that very night, Rusty actually goes to his mother saying that he's not feeling well, and his mom tells him to go lay down for a bit. But later that night, when she goes to check in on him, we see that he has transformed and is now a giant rabid dog, and he lashes out at his mother, even chasing her through the family home. We also see Rusty's siblings in the house as well, with his sister seeming to be attacked just like the mother, but the brother, who I believe is named Digger, does manage to lock himself in his room before Rusty can actually attack him. After that, we skip to the next morning and see that the doctor has come to check on Rusty because he heard that he was sick. But when he gets there, all he finds is 2 bodies. So of course, he ends up calling the police. Now, when the cops arrive, they do a sweep of the home, and while the mother and daughter are obviously ripped up, they do find that Digger has survived, although he is pretty shaken up by the events. The cops waste no time getting him to a hospital and then calling his father, who I believe is an army soldier, which may explain why he wasn't actually home the night of the attack. In the next scene, we see that Mr. Kelpie has arrived at the hospital right as Digger is being questioned by the police officer, but Digger doesn't actually appear to have any information for the officer. But once Digger is alone with his father, he reveals that the person who hurt their family was actually Rusty. And while the dad was upset at first, he soon realized that Digger lied so that they would have a chance to actually save Rusty, believing that the police would hurt him if they knew the truth. And after that conversation, we see Mr. Kelpie make arrangements with some of his army buddies to go capture his son and hopefully bring him in for some type of testing so maybe they can cure him. Now back over with the police, we see that they're now investigating another homicide, but this time it is at Chloe's house. And when the cops get there, they end up splitting up so that they can check the house faster. But we see that when Officer Randy is downstairs alone, he runs into infected Chloe, who is at stage 5 of this infection. But before Chloe actually takes a bite out of Randy, we hear a gunshot go off. And while I thought that Randy was going to get packed up here, or at the very least infected, it seems like he hit Chloe right in the forehead. And if you look closely here, you can see that some blood is on his shoulder, but apparently he wasn't bitten, that's just blood from the entry wound of the bullet. But seeing that something was obviously infecting Chloe here, the 2 cops call a decontamination crew to make sure that they can handle this body carefully, because it's clear that Chloe is sick and they don't want whatever's going on with her to get out to the general public. In the next scene, we see that Mr. Kelpie meets up with the army and they're making plans to catch his son, hopefully using non-lethal rounds. But unfortunately, they also make it clear that if they need to put him down, they will. And for whatever reason, they decided to actually go look for Rusty at night, which is a terrible idea. But they do actually find him. It's kind of strange though, when we look at him, he seems to look more like a lizard at this point than a dog. But whatever he is, his jaws still work because he snaps up this soldier here, and when they try to take a shot at him with the tranquilizers, they just end up hitting the soldier instead, and Rusty is actually able to escape. And I think the reason that they didn't actually chase him down was because they have this soldier here who was injured, and they probably didn't want to just leave him out in the woods by himself. Now back over at Bluey's house, we see that Bandit and Chilli have just learned that this infection is really serious and not just a one-off situation. So with this understanding, they decide to start gathering supplies so that they can actually take the girls and get to a safer area, most likely the grandfather's house if this is similar to the other versions. Something that I noticed is that the parents still haven't told the children how bad things are outside, which I think is going to be a mistake, especially since right after Chilli leaves the kitchen here, we see Rusty burst into their window, forcing Chilli to knock him over the head with his 2x4. Unfortunately though, Chilli is bitten, but for some reason, I think that she's actually immune in this AU, kind of acting as like the Ellie of this universe. And if you guys remember, in the Sacrifice AU, they were also able to use Bluey's blood in order to make a type of vaccine.
I feel cold.
So I'm really starting to suspect that Chilli's bloodline may just have some type of antibodies or immunity to this virus overall, but I'll speak more about that later. Now, once Bandit sees that his wife is bitten, he takes her upstairs to clean the wound and bandage it, and then we see that they go back downstairs to check on Rusty, only to see that he's gone. But it seems like he didn't actually get too far, because if I'm understanding this right, Rusty is right outside the house, laying by the trash can, and I'm guessing from the angle that they see him, maybe they think that he's still knocked out, or maybe even dead, but we can see that he opens his eyes here, and we know that he is very much still alive. Now, after that, we see Chilli call the cops, and as far as we know, they're able to actually capture Rusty and take him away. But still feeling afraid for their family, we see Bandit and Chilli get the girls and Brandy to sleep in their room together so that they're all kind of close if anything else goes wrong here. And later that night, while they're all sleeping, Bandit hears a knock on the door and goes to check it out, hearing Lucky on the other side asking for help. And Bandit, being the kind-hearted dog that he is, felt like this puppy was actually in trouble, so he opened the door, and then we see this.
Thank you, Mr. Healer.
Lucky?
Now, after that, we actually get to learn that Rusty was the one to infect Lucky's family, taking out both of his parents and infecting him. We can see here that he bit a chunk out of his ear as well. We also get to see that Lucky's body was transforming in real time while he was outside of Bandit's door, letting us know just how fast this virus spreads once it's actually in the body. We also see that once Lucky is in the house, Bandit basically sacrifices himself so that his family would have time to get out, which is what he did in the original story as well. Now, while Bandit's family makes it to the car and drives away, we see that Bandit did actually manage to take out Lucky, although we know that he's infected because we can see the bite mark on his leg here. Now, luckily, Chilli and the kids make it to the grandpa's house with no issues, and of course, the grandfather takes them all in. And while Chilli is speaking to her father, we see Bluey and Bingo actually trying to call Bandit, but he's not able to answer because he's literally transforming in their house. And this was kind of a sad scene here because the girls don't understand that their father is already gone. Now, luckily, part 2 has already been released, so we get to jump right back into the AU with this creepy image of Bandit. Now, after that eerie scene, we see that Chilli has decided to go out to get supplies, and she ends up going to this mall, which seems to have a full parking lot, what made me think that this was going to be a safe trip. But as Chilli points out, once he actually gets into the parking lot, there seems to be no other dogs around, and it's way too quiet. And as she approaches the door, we see that everything is locked up, and the inside is completely dark. And now if this was me, I would have booked it out of there immediately. But Chilli instead goes back to the car and grabs a pistol and goes in through the back door of the mall. Once inside, she finds the security room and gets the cameras working again. And then we see this image of a few other dogs in the store, and there's also at least one infected in there, keeping them all in hiding. But not wanting to leave empty-handed, Chilli ends up going into the store to grab supplies and runs into this infected dog, and it looks like she gets at least one shot off on it kind of in the chest area, but then she runs away without grabbing anything other than some milk, I think. But I mean, at that point, she had already put down the infected. She might as well just gone shopping, you know? After that encounter, she goes back to her home in order to grab some stuff that they left behind when they had to flee because Lucky got into the house. We see Chilli has to climb up the side of the house, and as she's grabbing items, we see this image of her and Bandit looking happy on their wedding day, and Chilli has a moment of regret for not being able to actually save her husband. But then she hears Bandit growling downstairs, and she books it out of the house. But before she leaves, she slides these two pictures that Bluey and Bingo drew under the door. And to my surprise, we see that even though Bandit is obviously infected, he's still able to speak and understand what's going on here.
I'm sorry, girls. Daddy's not coming home.
Chilli ends up making it back to her father's house unharmed, and then we see the two of them come up with the idea to start calling up other survivors and getting them to come to the house. With the idea being that since the grandfather has so much land out here, it will be good to get some survivors together so that they have a better chance at actually surviving through this outbreak. So with her father's blessing, Chilli goes and she calls a doctor, and then she also calls Trixie, inviting them to come over. And since they knew that they were going to be expecting a lot of new dogs, the grandfather went outside and started setting up a living area with like a bunch of tents and whatnot. And it looks like he was just in time because we see Trixie and her family really hightailed it over there. Now, while all the adults are talking and working, we see the children get together in order to play hide and seek out in the woods, which of course is a terrible idea. And as many of you have already guessed, while Bluey is searching for the other kids, an infected pops up and starts chasing her. But before it can actually devour her, we see that she runs into her grandpa and he puts the infected down. Now, what worried me here for a moment is that Bluey seems to have a bandage wrapped around her hand, but Chilli says that Bluey ends up unharmed, so maybe she just scraped it up when she was actually running or something like that. Next, we see more survivors make their way to the camp, and we see that the doctor is here as well. And I just want to point out that it was smart of them to grab a doctor early on in this outbreak, because in most AUs or just like zombie movies in general, they never have like a full-fledged doctor there. They may have a nurse or somebody who's kind of medically trained, but having a doctor is huge. After that, we see that Chilli goes to speak with Mr. Kelpie, and we learn that he and the army have found an abandoned hospital near Chilli's camp. And the plan is for them to go ahead and move into that hospital so they can start a operation there to run tests on the infected. And Chilli is even able to get them to agree to grab Bandit on their way over, meaning that there still may be a chance to save him. And I just want to point out here that when they said abandoned hospital, they were not joking. When Mr. Kelpie arrives, we see the hospital in the background and it looks absolutely terrible. So they're going to have a lot of work to do to get this place up and running well. Now, after that scene, it seems like life is pretty normal, all things considered. Most of the adults have been assigned jobs and the kids are being cared for and just watched over by adults at all times. But this is also the part of the story where we divert from the safe AU path, which is another version of this AU, and we start to go down a path called Hope. And while this sounds like it's going to have a happy ending, I want to remind people that the safe AU and the sacrifice AU both had like sad endings. The last time I checked in on the safe AU, I'm pretty sure it had Bluey losing everybody and running through the woods by herself. So I'm not going to get my hopes up that this is going to have like a happy ending. Now, in the next scene, we see Chilli runs into Rusty's dad, and the two of them start talking about plans for the camp, but eventually they start to speak about the loved ones that they have lost as they look up into the night sky. And then we get this line.
The worst part was I wasn't able to be there for her. I was deployed during her attack.
You never really get over it. No, but sometimes you find someone who makes the weight a little easier to carry.
And this makes it sound like something may happen between Mr. Kelpie and Chilli, especially if they're not able to cure Bandit. The next day, we see Mr. Kelpie and some of his army dogs go to pick up Bandit, and the first thing that I noticed is that Bandit was super calm when they came in, not even attempting to attack or keep himself from being taken at all. And I think this shows us that while Bandit may not be immune, he may have some type of resistance that allows him to maintain his mind and his calmness. Because when you think about it, Lucky got bitten and transformed within minutes, while Bandit has been infected for a while now. And even when they end up getting him back to the hospital, we see that Chilli is allowed to go inside his room and speak with him alone. And I found it kind of touching that even in this state, Bandit is just happy that his wife and kids are safe, and all he really asked for is a dog bed, because the room that they stuck him in is really cold. But the one thing that really stood out for me is that he's basically telling his wife that he doesn't know how long he can keep his sanity. He can feel his body rotting away, which sounds like some obvious foreshadowing that he's about to like go into attack mode. And in the very next scene, we see Mr. Kelpie and Chilli are alone, and he's basically telling her that she doesn't have to take on all this responsibility by herself. He lets her know that he can take some of the load for her. And we hear after the intercom that Bandit has escaped and people should shelter in place. But of course, Chilli wants to go see if she can talk her husband down and get him back into his room. But it doesn't seem like he's listening and even lunges at her. But before he can sink his teeth into her, we hear a gunshot go off and see that this soldier shot him in the back and doesn't seem to be too worried about it. Now, the issue here is that the soldiers were supposed to be using tranquilizers, which would just put the infected to sleep. But now, not only did he take Bandit out in front of his wife, but they also have lost the chance to study Bandit and see why he might be different. After that, we see Mr. Kelpie trying to comfort Chilli because he's obviously in distress, even going as far as saying that they'll get through this together while putting his hand on top of hers. Which may seem a little quick, but in all honesty, we could already tell which way these two are going to go in this AU. We also learned that Mr. Kelpie's name is Anthony in this AU, so moving forward, I'll be calling him that because it's just easier. Now, eventually, Chilli does have to let the girls know what happened to their father, and that goes about as well as you would expect. In the next scene, we see Rusty reaching out to the military camp called Eagle Point, and he reveals that he and his team have made a breakthrough in creating a cure and are making vaccines right now. The plan is to bring the vaccines to Eagle Point once they are done so they can start actually getting these vaccines out to the general public. After 1 week, we see Rusty reach out to Eagle Point again, but this time they don't respond, giving off the impression that their camp may have been overrun by the infected at some point. After that, we learn that the reason that they're able to find a cure is because Chilli's dad seems to be making antibodies, and they were able to use his blood for a vaccine. And this goes back to the idea that I had earlier that something about Chilli's bloodline is making them immune to whatever this virus or infection is. And also, I'm just happy to see that the grandpa is voluntarily giving up his blood, unlike what they did to Bluey. Next, we see Anthony is getting ready to head over to Eagle Point with a huge shipment of the cure, but before he can leave, Chilli shows up. She basically doesn't want him to go and even offers to accompany him, but he has his own team of soldiers and should be safe with them realistically. But seeing that she is worried, he gives her a kiss and reassures her that he'll be fine, confirming what I think we all knew was going to happen with these two in this AU. I find it kind of funny though that the grandpa comes up and says that Anthony has something to fight for now, which is odd because I'm pretty sure Digger is still alive. This man still has a whole son, but this woman that he just had his first kiss with is his reason to go on. After that, we get to see Anthony and his crew have arrived at Eagle Point, and the place is absolutely destroyed. And it looks like most of the soldiers were taken out as well. And as Anthony is looking around, he finds out that the culprit here is his son, Rusty. And while Anthony wants his soldiers to hold their fire because he knows that they have a cure now and they may be able to save him, I don't think Rusty is going to give them a chance, as we see he lunges at his father. But before we can see the results of that attack, it fades to black. Now, I'm going to be honest, most of these AUs don't have a happy ending, as I said earlier, so I think that Rusty's dad is likely going to get eaten up here, or at the very least infected. And I wouldn't be surprised if Rusty and his dad came back to camp to attack everybody there, kind of acting as like a final stand between the infected and the survivors. But honestly, I think this will be an AU where most of the people survive simply because they now have a cure. And with Chilli, Bluey, and the grandpa kind of having immunity or partial immunity, I think they have a good chance of actually making it out of this. But as always, when we get a couple more updates, I might cover the next part just so we can see how it ends. All in all, I enjoyed this AU. I think she does a really good job with the Bluey characters. Make sure to go check out some of the other videos on her channel because I think some of the other AUs have been updated as of now. But with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, check out this video on the screen here. Subscribe to Diddy, become a member of the Ors Force, and we'll see you tomorrow with another one. Peace, peace.